Welcome back to the show. Today we're diving into a rather profound puzzle at the heart of constitutional democracy. Why do some courts boldly strike down controversial laws, while others, facing similar laws, hold back? This is a question that stirs up quite a debate, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when we think about it, many scholars offer a one-word answer: judicial independence. But what does judicial independence really mean? Simply put, it's the ability of judges to make decisions free from external pressures, whether that be from elected officials or political retaliation. This ability is essential for courts to uphold the law and protect individual rights, especially against the government of the day.
Great point. And to clarify for our listeners, judicial independence is not the same as judicial review. While judicial review is the court's power to invalidate statutes that conflict with the Constitution, judicial independence is a broader concept. It shapes how that power is used. Independence facilitates a fair and impartial judiciary, allowing judges to make decisions based on the law rather than public opinion or political consequences. Let's discuss why this distinction is vital.
Absolutely. To illustrate this idea, consider a high-profile case like Gonzalez v. Carhart, which dealt with federal abortion legislation. The Supreme Court upheld certain controversial aspects of federal law that many believed would be struck down based on prevailing political ideologies at the time. This raises a critical question. If courts are supposed to strike down laws they disagree with, why do they sometimes uphold them?
And that leads us to explore the concept of judicial independence in greater depth. As articulated by Gerrit N. van de Kamp in his article, The Conditioning Role of Judicial Independence in the Exercise of Judicial Review, independence changes how courts actually exercise their power. It's not just about being free from pressure, it impacts the decisions being made.
Exactly. And the interesting part is that there are two competing theories about judicial independence that we can delve into. The first one is the additive independence hypothesis, which suggests that as courts become more independent, they're more likely to strike down laws regardless of ideological leanings.
However, the second theory that Van de Kamp presents, known as the conditional preference hypothesis, posits a more nuanced view. It states that independence actually moderates the effect of ideological preferences, meaning the ideological leanings of judges matter more when a court is insulated from threats, and less so when it is vulnerable. This distinction can radically change how we understand court decisions.
It really does. And for our listeners wondering how these theories play out in reality, let's examine what Van de Kamp's research shows. He analyzed U.S. Supreme Court constitutional decisions from 1949 to 2011, focusing on whether the court invalidated or upheld key federal statutes. His findings are quite revealing.
Definitively. The data suggests that when independence is modeled simply as an additive factor, the results are often weak or even null. But when independence is treated as a moderating factor, it significantly strengthens the link between ideology and the likelihood of striking down laws. In plain terms, this means that when courts are robustly independent, judges' ideological stances predict their decisions more effectively.
And here's where it gets really fascinating. When courts are insulated from political pressures and court-curbing measures, judges often hold stronger to their ideological preferences. On the flip side, when courts feel vulnerable, judges may restrain themselves, holding back even if they personally oppose a law.
Such dynamics can lead to misunderstandings about judicial powers, particularly in democracies where institutions are intended to balance the powers of the majority with the protection of minority rights. Enhancing judicial independence may not only make courts tougher, it might amplify the political significance of their ideological character.
This brings us to a critical reflection point for our listeners. As we consider the implications of these findings, we should think about how they connect to contemporary debates about court transparency, political influence, and public support for judicial systems. Court-curbing measures can create a chilling effect on judges, discouraging robust judicial action when rights are at stake.
Exactly. As we wrap up today's insightful discussion, it's clear that judicial independence is a central theme in the ongoing conversation about the role of courts in a democracy. If we want courts to effectively protect rights while remaining accountable, we must pay close attention to the structures that sustain independence, like appointment processes, tenure, and limits on judicial interference.
So, to sum up our key takeaways, judicial independence isn't merely a buffer against political pressure. It shapes how judges interpret laws based on their ideological preferences. Additionally, its role as a conditional factor rather than an additive one is critical for understanding court behavior. And finally, fostering independence is essential not just for court legitimacy, but for the integrity of democracy itself.
Wonderful insights shared today. Thank you for joining us in this deep dive into the operation of judicial independence. And as always, we invite you to think critically about these themes and their relevance in your own civic engagement. Until next time.